Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Fraser. As Belgian just said, I work with digital services at Legal Aid BC. I'll be giving you a quick whirlwind tour of our PLEI resources. We have a whole bunch, so it'll be a very high-level overview. We've got everything from printed materials to in-person services, and we'll see all of that very soon. So first, we'll look at PLI in general, followed by a handful of publications, what some of our videos are like, an update on MyLawBC, an update on how, or not an update, session on how to use the family law website, and then an overview of our legal information services. So, PLEI is public legal education and information. We know that clients have differing needs, so we provide PLEI in many, many different forms. From in-depth guides to in-person information services, as I just said. And we know that our clients really often benefit from an intermediary or a navigator to assist them in navigating the process. So we design a lot of our services to be aids for you for helping other people understand their situation. Sorry. Can't scroll down my notes from up here. So I'll just wing it, I guess. Clients are often the benefit. So yes, producing PLEI, we really like to focus on co-creation when we do it. It's really important that we're not showing up to communities and saying like, this is what's best for you. So we always start by reaching out to the community and, facilitators that work with those communities directly, because we're not always the right people to be approaching people. And once we've done that and we've provided what we think is the best thing after doing community consultation, because the law is always evolving, when we have to update our materials, we go back to the community and do usability and accessibility testing to make sure that what we have provided is as good as possible. So as I go through this, just think about how you can use these tools to help your clients, how you can help them to recognize and understand their legal issue, find ways to resolve their problems out of court, and connect them to other services and plan their next steps. So first, I'm going to go over our publications. We have over 100 of them, but I'm only going to go through a small handful. But all of them are free to order online, and they're all available as free PDFs on our website. So to find them on our website, you go to community workers and scroll down to free publications, and then there'll be a few different ways for you to search for them. You can search them by subject, by language, by title. We often have things in up to 6 different languages. And down there, we have the readability list, and that can connect you to things in a different way, which I'll talk about. So when we talk about publications, we have such a broad range of things, from little information sheets to in-depth guides about writing GLADU applications. So we have them all sorted out. So when you're sending someone towards a guide, or if you're looking for something, you know ahead how in-depth it's going to be. So level 1, no legal knowledge needed. Publications, they're all in clear, plain language. You don't need to know any legal terms to read them. Level 2, you have to have a higher reading level, and it's for people who are comfortable reading and have some legal knowledge. And then level 3, that's for you, people who deal with the law and legal terms and provide services. And you're reaching for a question? Oh.
Hello? Is it working?
It's working.
Okay. I've been doing this work a long time, and I've never noticed really that there was a distinguishment between level 1, level 2, level 3. How is that indicated on the publications themselves?
It's not on the publications themselves, but it's how you can sort through them on our website.
Okay.
So yeah, it's on that little squared area on that slide. We can go as we go along. Right. So this is one of our most popular family law publications, Living Together, Living Apart. We recently legally updated it and did usability testing with our community partner up in Bella Coola. So thank you very much for that. So this one is everything you need to know about, living in a marriage-like relationship, being married, getting separated, why you might want to make living arrangements with, and the whole process of creating, child support arrangements, separation arrangements, that sort of thing. Parents' rights, kids' rights. This explains what happens if the Director of Child Protection has concerns about a child's safety or plans to remove a child from the family home. It describes the child protection process for Indigenous and non-Indigenous children separately, because obviously law is different for different people. And it also has collaborative and shared planning and decision-making options for staying out of court, what can be decided in court at the presentation and protection hearings, a flow chart with an overview of the child protection process, community services and legal help, and a definition, like a glossary of definitions to help people understand their orders. Mothers leaving abusive partners. This guide is for women with children who've been abused by their intimate partner. This includes a spouse or someone they were never in a relationship with, but share a child with. The booklet explains how to get help and protection and how to handle parenting arrangements. We produced this in collaboration with the YWCA in Metro Vancouver. And we have working with your legal aid lawyer. This is a handy printable sheet that you can hand to clients, or you can order a big stack of them from us if you want to have them in color printing. It describes client and lawyer responsibilities to help them both know what to expect from a legal aid contract. It also explains what the lawyer's time on the case includes, what the lawyer can and can't do, a change of counsel request by the client or the lawyer, and where to find out about making a complaint. And finally, this is a set of postcards. It's a family law quick reference tool. This is great for when you're training new people or just trying to get across some basic family law knowledge to a client that in plain language. It includes a legal aspect of separation, such as which laws apply, how couples can reach arrangements, and how to deal with issues involving children and money. Next, we have a lot of videos on our website, and you can also just reach us at our YouTube channel. We have Q&As, we have webinars, legal information, training videos, how-to videos, animations based on some of our level 1 comic books for child protection matters for kids, all sorts of stuff. I really suggest you go through and search for key words in your area of law. These are some examples of all based on the new provincial court family rules, if that is your area. And now, before I go into the family law website, I have to make an announcement about My Law BC. Legal Aid will be closing down My Law BC as we go through the process of strategic reimagining, as our CEO said this morning. We were presented with an opportunity to streamline our service delivery and refocus our resources where they have the greatest impact. As part of that process, we've decided to retire My Law BC. If you're already familiar with the site and the Family Resolution Center, our online dispute resolution or online dispute platform, this will be closing down as well. So the key dates for that, if you send clients to it, are at the end of November. We will stop accepting new users. And then on the last day of February, all the sites will close down completely.
Is there any plan? Like, sorry, I remember when the My Law BC came out and there was a lot of controversy from the anti-violence sector about the distribution of resources. But now that we have it, I mean, especially the wills and planning your estate, future, like that is not something that's very easily covered with conventional things. Is there any plan? I mean, especially the wills and planning for your future care. The other ones, I don't know how much uptake those had. Is there any plan to sort of give those over to someone else to be able to continue to use, or make them into a new format?
The website content, we have plans to let it all live on in different places. So the family law content will move over to the family law website. And currently we're looking for basically caretakers for the rest of it. So people who cover those sectors more specifically.
Sorry if you're going to answer this probably soon, maybe, but when these close down at the end of November and February, will they already have a home before they close down, or will there be a gap in the time between having access to them and them getting their new?
Yes. So the Family Resolution Center won't be finding a new home, so that will just be closing down. But the rest of them will be working to have them available up to that date, and ideally all have a new home once it's closed down. So the family law website. So this is the largest repository of family law information in the province, and it's designed to be a tool for you to use with your clients or for your clients to use themselves. It covers information of divorce, parenting, support, finances, abuse and family violence, using the court system, and related legal issues. And there's also a chat where you can talk to a volunteer law student who will try and help you with your issues. So the guides, if you don't use these, they are super, super useful. It's a step-by-step guide that is designed to take you through every step of a legal process. And as you go through, it links you to resources and also legal forms. And some of the legal forms even have instructions built into the PDF to help you fill them out. And when you print them out, they won't show up with it. So it's a really useful tool. They're designed using something called progressive disclosure, which only gives you as much information as you need at that time. So that can help reduce overwhelm while you're using it, because that can be, people are in stressful places. They're dealing with the law. Sorry, you look like you have a question.
I was going to let you finish. One of the things, so I use the sole application for uncontested divorce. I give that to a lot of clients. One of the things that I wonder about is like, how do you test for this sort of efficacy or to like troubleshoot? Like one of the things that I'm wondering it might be useful is to have like a, did you complete this? Please contact us. And then being able to do surveys and to just find out about the user experience. Because I noticed that every so often there's like a little bit of glitches because policies or registries have issues. And so being able to capture that, because they come to us and say, hey, this problem happened with this guide you told me about, and there's not necessarily a clear communicative way. So if there's something that enables people at each step to say, are you using the tool? Tell us about your experience. That might be a way of being able to capture like any kind of hiccups.
We can see how far people click into things, how often. So that is data that is potentially available. So yes, the guides. Yes. So as you go through progressive disclosure, they are really, really useful. And if you haven't used them, please check them out, because it's really useful. And, we know that you can't always be with your client the whole way. So if you can direct them there and help explain it and answer questions about it, they can later visit it at their own time and have some confidence in using it. These are just some examples of step-by-step guides that will be useful when you download it from the SCID. And then the other part of the Family Law website are just information pages. Not everything needs to be broken down into these step-by-steps. So they have, Q&A form things. They have links to other resources and services and pretty in-depth information, all written in plain language, which is really important. So the other cool integration is that, when you're dealing with the law, not everything can be plain language all the time. So when we hit terms of legal jargon, we have an integrated dictionary that when you hover over legal terms, it'll have a plain language description of that legal term. So it's really just handy to also have this open with you sometimes when you're dealing with clients, and show them that when they use it on their own, it does everything it can to make it not so overwhelming. Here are some more examples. Child protection process is really, really popular one. What to do if you're struggling to pay support. You can swear an affidavit. So there's so many. And then once you get used to the website, we have our advocate page. So when you're on the front, family.legalaid.bc.ca, you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a square that says advocates. And it's sort of like a cheat code to getting to where you need to go faster, because when you're dealing with your clients, if you already know the step-by-step guides are there and you know the area of law, you can go here and just go straight to these information pages and step-by-step guides, just like through a directory, because the rest of it is designed for someone discovering their own information. So it says like, this is what I was served with, and then you click through and then it takes you into the appropriate guide or information page. This is how you skip that process and just go directly where you need to go. And then finally we have the lab chat. So we have a team of law students who from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, sit at it with a chat box open, and people can go in there and ask family law questions, and it's all information services. They can't give legal advice, but they can give legal information. So speaking of advice and information services, not advice services, I'm going to go over just a few of our information services. I'm going to go over 3. Our legal information outreach workers. If you're paying attention this morning, our CEO mentioned justice navigators. That's a new role at Legal Aid, so I'll cover that a little bit. And then we'll talk about our community partners. So LIOW, our legal information outreach workers. These are Legal Aid BC staff who can provide you with legal information, help you find legal information and self-help resources, give away publications, as I covered earlier. They also do refer you to services like duty counsel and other community services to get legal advice. And then the other part of the role, the O, outreach, they visit community groups to talk about legal aid, distribute publications, raise awareness about our websites, that sort of thing. And while they're doing that, they collect feedback from the community, and then we always use that to help decide what else is needed to produce more PLEA. They're all available through our location in Vancouver, and they have a direct line, and you can reach them through our main phone number. And they also, as part of that outreach work, they go to the courts. So they spend time at the Downtown Community Court and the New West First Nations Court, and just make themselves available to people who need information. So if you're dealing with someone who's going to court, you can let them know that the LIOs might be there and might be able to help them connect to services and find more information. Now we have our criminal justice navigators. These are new. They are an innovative, collaborative, person-centered service provided by us for people who have criminal law matters. The service aims to provide a safe and supportive environment where people can receive necessary assistance to move forward with their criminal matters. So some of that is much like a legal information outreach worker. Navigators also address their underlying needs, though. The needs for people to be connected to support organizations in their communities. So when they're, leaving, having been incarcerated, they're being directed to services that can help them, which will hopefully lower recidivism if we can provide, whole, all around help. Great. Here are some of the services that they provide. So they'll facilitate the transfer of legal aid applications from lawyers to public to intake. They'll work with lawyers and duty counsel to connect clients with addictions or mental health support, mental health team, recovery houses, income assistance, and possibly housing. Help to identify remanded accused who face barriers and acquire extra assistance. Assist arrested accused who are making bail appearance and subsequent appearances in the initial appearance room, and support counsel acting for in custody accused who are making appearances on local court remand list by helping plan community supervision supports to inform sentencing. And last, they're going to support out of custody duty counsel and accused who are making appearances by helping plan community supervision supports to inform sentencing. So a lot of wraparound support. Hopefully this will do a lot for the community. And then I'm going to follow up with just wrong direction.
One quick question. Oh, never mind. I'll let you finish.
Is it on my list of frequently asked questions?
It is not. What I'm wondering about is this, it sounds a lot like the advocates with the Parents Legal Center, like there seems to be a lot of similarity. Is it considered very similar? Is it kind of modeled to be similar, or is it quite different and it just a lot of overlap?
I wasn't involved in the creation of the role, but this is specifically for criminal clients.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we know what works. So yeah, how do people access the service? They don't need to qualify for legal aid. People facing charges can contact their local criminal justice navigator by phone or email. They'll be able to meet with people because we know it's important to be able to travel and meet people on their own terms or where they need to be. Yeah, where will it be offered? We have this list here of Kamloops, Kelowna, Penticton, Victoria, Surrey, New West, Abbotsford, Nanaimo, Hazelton Terrace, and then there'll be 2 in Vancouver. And when is it starting? We're hiring right now all around the province, but right now we have 1 active now in Nanaimo. So this leads into our community partners. So the Legal Aid Community Engagement Program was started in 2010 to 11 to increase public accessibility to PLEI and to increase awareness about legal aid intake. We had a emphasis on rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. So there are service providers that we partner with to raise awareness of LABC, our legal information, to distribute our PLEI materials and give intake advice and representation services. Community partners project aligns with the LABC goal to collaborate and work with communities around the province to raise awareness. I said awareness before, to connect people to trusted intermediaries and services already working in those communities specifically. We know needs are often more acute in isolated areas, so most community partners are out in rural areas, but we also have a few in Vancouver, as we know that's also needed. So what do? They act as a link between LABC and people who need to apply for legal aid services, raise awareness, as I said, provide access to materials, and provide legal information, not legal advice. And they refer people to in-community services. And here is a list of all 25 locations we have, 25 partners we have in 30 locations. Some people are multiple communities. Yeah, any questions about community partners or any other PLEI that I covered? Is there anything in the chat? Okay, I'll leave it over to Adina.
Okay, I need to pull up my presentation first. But first, while we do that, I can provide a little bit of introduction about who I am. My name is Adina Popescu. I'm the manager of Family Law Advice Services, not Family Law Services. Connected, but not the same. I've been with Legal Aid BC for about 4 years now. Before that, I was in private practice, generous with a boutique firm, and I mostly handled family and child protection cases, and I acted as family duty counsel since 2016. So that's a little bit about me. So there's my presentation. I need to find the clicker. Okay, so my presentation will focus on family advice services and some related services to the family advice services. So how to get advice or help. So for example, it's like if one of your clients does not have a lawyer, either privately or through legal aid, then they may qualify for advice. Even if they do qualify for legal aid, even if they've been approved for legal aid, but they're waiting for a lawyer to be appointed, they still qualify for advice while they wait for the lawyer to be appointed. And for example, if they have a legal aid contract already, so it's like it's already been assigned to a lawyer, but the hours have been used up, then and now the client is trying to self-represent, again, they can get advice from our advice services, and that would be, I'll get into that a little bit later, Family Duty Counsel or Family LawLINE. Those are the primary ones. The client may not be financially eligible for a full representation contract, for example, but maybe for advice, because the financial eligibility is different for advice versus full representation. Or they may be eligible for a limited representation contract because currently, since about April of 2022, the financial eligibility for limited representation contracts and advice is very similar. So it's about, for limited representations, about $1,000 per month higher than for standard representation contracts. And even if for example, the client's legal issues may not qualify for a standard contract, even if they're financially eligible, so they can't get a standard legal aid contract, but they may qualify for advice or for a limited representation contract. So those are just some of the situations where you might want to refer some of your clients to advice services. So as I was saying, so there's two main areas where somebody can get family legal advice, and that's Family Duty Counsel and Family LawLINE. So I'm going to address each one individually. So, but first I'm going to start with who the lawyers are that provide this advice, because they're about the same not the same, but similar requirements for the lawyers, both for Family Duty Counsel and Family LawLINE. They're lawyers in private practice that have been contracted by Legal Aid BC to provide Family Duty Counsel or Family LawLINE services. They're usually assigned a specific shift where they are available to provide this advice. All of our lawyers on the advice services have a minimum of 2 years of experience, but most of them have considerably more. I would say about half probably have over 20 years of experience. There's a limited roster of lawyers in each location, and then there's a separate roster of lawyers for the LawLINE, for example. So in Cranbrook, we would have a certain number of lawyers that are on the roster. So it's not everybody can be on the roster. We wanted to keep it small, and we usually post it on our website when we are opening the roster to more lawyers, and we interview those lawyers, and so we can test their knowledge and their interest in the position. So we select the ones that we think are better suited for the service in each location. All of the lawyers that do Family Duty Counsel and Family LawLINE also take legal aid cases, either limited representation or full representation contracts. Now, in locations where there's Parents Legal Center, those lawyers from Parents Legal Centers will act as Family Duty Counsel on family list days, well, specifically on child protection list days. But that is not to say that they will be the only Family Duty Counsel there. Usually there's the two lawyers generally from the Parents Legal Center, and there's an additional Family Duty Counsel in case there's conflicts. Okay, so who are the clients that can use this service? As I mentioned, they have to be self-represented. If you already have a lawyer, you can't qualify for this service, for the advice services, either privately or through legal aid. So usually they get referred back to contact their lawyer if they tell us that they already have a lawyer when they contact the advice services. And they must be financially eligible for advice services.
If a client has a retainer, like for child protection, say, and then they have a question maybe on property division or something like that, are they able to go to duty counsel for the family law matter? I know that there's the 10 hours of collateral issues, but
yes, it's like there's actually 7 hours of additional hours for a family law issue, and there are collateral issues. Those are a little bit different. So it's just in terms of the collateral issues are 4 hours, I think, under the contract, and they apply to assisting the client with obtaining housing, but no, in that case, it's like we want them. So if they usually have a lawyer, we want them to keep them with that lawyer. It's like, this is to avoid getting contradictory information, especially if the client may not tell the same information to both lawyers, not intentionally, but it happens. And then we get into a situation where one lawyer gives one legal advice, and it's like the other lawyer says something else, and it's not good service for the client either. So we do recommend that they talk to their lawyer within those 7 hours. If they need more, they can apply for legal aid. If they don't qualify for legal aid, because there's, as probably all of you know, there's different financial eligibility for family and child protection, then we can assess them case by case. So it's like usually the Family Duty Counsel will make that call, whether it's too connected to actually deal with it. So, or if the same lawyer needs to deal with it. But yes, it does come up sometimes. So it's like usually we cannot assist on a related matter, on the related family matter. Usually if it's a different case, we could probably do it. But yes, first we usually send them, if they have a child protection contract already, we say it's like, your lawyer can provide you with some advice on this, which is more than they would qualify for advice services in any event. Oops. Sorry. Oh, yes. So as I was saying, so they have to be financially eligible for advice services. But unlike for a representation contract, this is self-declared. So there's no need to provide proof of income or anything like that. So it's just based on what the client tells us that they make. Even the clients who are not financially eligible, they can get up to 45 minutes of advice at the lawyer's discretion. And we do say at the lawyer's discretion because the lawyers do have to prioritize the clients that do qualify for their advice services. And especially if it's during a list day and the client may not have a matter in court and they don't qualify for advice, I mean, they can wait and see if there's time. It's like during the day. So it's like to receive the advice, but there is an obligation on the lawyer to prioritize the clients that do qualify for that advice, and especially if they have a matter in court.
What about the enhanced duty counsel? Does that also qualify for the 45 minutes?
Yes. So it's like, that's only in Victoria right now. So it's like.
What about Vancouver?
Vancouver does not, it's not technically the expanded Family Duty Counsel. So Family Duty Counsel, I'll get to that a little bit later. They could provide up to 3 hours of advice. The expanded one in Victoria used to be a pilot project and provide up to 6 hours of advice. Other than that, the services in Vancouver and Victoria are pretty similar. So they do provide written advice, so to the client, so written follow-up.
But specifically for that 45 minutes, if they went to sort of the Vancouver or the Victoria Duty Counsel, would they still be able to get the 45 minutes?
Yes, for any kind of location. So it's like, but again, it's at the lawyer's discretion depending on availability. No, that's fine. Okay, so what could the lawyers help with? So they can provide brief legal advice about the law and procedure. They can review documents. They can assist clients who are preparing the documents themselves, but this is an important differentiation. They cannot prepare the documents for the client themselves. So if a client comes in and says, I need to draft this notice of family claim, can you do it for me? They can't. I can tell, it's like the lawyers can tell you, it's like, this is what you need to put in your notice of family claim. Or if you have a draft already, I can review it and make notes on it and maybe make suggestions, but it's not like I can start drafting it from scratch within the appointment and be done by the end of it. It's just not reasonable. It's like, they don't have enough time within the time allotted. They can also assist with emergency applications. So for example, protection orders is like, so those, because generally Family Duty Counsel cannot go to contested hearings or trials, but with emergency application like protection orders, especially the ones without notice, they can assist with that in court as well. And also with helping them prepare the documents and then assisting them in court. They can also provide referrals to legal aid if appropriate, and to other resources like Family Justice Counselor, the Child and Youth Legal Center. I do want to specifically draw your attention to the referrals to legal aid. We do have a form that Family Duty Counsel can use. It is called Family Duty Counsel Referral to Intake. And the family duty counsel can send it directly to the online application page, or they can give it to the client after they filled it out. Basically, just identifies the client and identifies briefly what their issues are. Because if they already had a consultation with the client, they might be in a better position to articulate for legal aid intake what the actual issues are. And the form also has the option of raising it to intake's attention that is like that if they don't qualify for a standard contract, if they can be assessed for a limited representation contract, then they can indicate whether they are willing to accept the family limited representation contract if the client qualifies for it. Okay, so this is where you will probably, the duty counsel, family duty counsel are most visible, and during provincial court on family list days. Less so during the pandemic because it was not in person, but that's resuming right now. In addition to the family list days, family duty counsel could participate in case conferences if arranged in advance. So there's a special contract for family duty counsel where you can get up to 2 hours of attendance plus 3 hours of preparation time. It's used to be for what used to be called family case conference. Now it's family settlement conference or judicial case conference in Supreme Court. So it would qualify for either, but it does have to be arranged in advance because we need to make sure that the lawyer and the client connect in advance and the lawyer is available to attend a specific date when that conference is scheduled for. As I was mentioning, so for most family duty counsel, there's a maximum of 3 hours of advice for eligible clients. I mean, that's not a hard cap. So we've made exceptions on many situations. That's also a little bit to the discretion of the lawyer. It's like, especially if the client just needs 1 more hours to finish a matter, to wrap up a document or to wrap up some process they're going through. So it's like we're pretty flexible with that.
And that brings me to a question. I've never figured this out, and I've been doing this work for 16 years. The 3 hours, is that like 3 hours lifetime, 3 hours per matter, 3 hours per year or two? Like it like, I know that people seem to be able to go back, but I can't figure out the rhyme or the reason to it.
So generally we do say 3 hours for a certain issue. And when you see a certain issue, it's like per case. So it's like, for example, if you're coming in and you have a child protection case, you get 3 hours for that. If you have a family law matter, you get 3 hours for that. But it's like, but now you have a family law matter with a different opposing party. So it's like, that's a different matter. So it's like, it could be another 3 hours.
So if we had a client that was financially ineligible for a limited retainer, she's $500 over that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she comes to legal aid, or she comes to duty counsel, she's asking for help with child support.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets her 3 hours, she's got a child support order, but now he's really angry that he has to pay. And she now needs to get protective orders. Can she get 3 more hours to help with protective orders?
Generally, when we're dealing with safety issues and protection orders, we don't usually look at the hours. And by the way, so it's like, we're talking about 3 hours of advice. Again, it's like for some locations, we can't monitor that.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not, even for Vancouver, for example, where we can monitor it because we have administrative assistants, that does not include the attendance in court. So it's like, it's just for the advice appointments. So it's like, they can't keep making advice appointments 10 hours. But if they have a matter in court, they will still probably qualify for legal advice, even though they've exhausted their 3 hours of advice.
So if we flip it, so she comes, she gets the protection order, she's now safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so now she feels like she can get child support from him. Would she be able to come back and ask?
So generally, no, because it's like, it's part of the same case.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's part of the same matter. So it's like, yes, I understand where that's coming from. So it's like, we do make exceptions for protection orders and safety issues, but the other way around, not so much.
Okay.
I have a quick question, if that's
Sure.
okay. So I work largely with clients. So I'm based in the Lower Mainland, but all of my clients are outside of the Lower Mainland because I'm a virtual legal advocate. Things moving back to being in person has been an issue for my role that started during the pandemic. And I'm often now requesting for court appearances to take place online, partly so that I can attend with my clients, but also because clients generally prefer online services. So it was great when duty counsel was just like always kind of available on MS Teams. Is that like when I request an online appearance, is that something that I guess happens automatically, or do we also have to request that duty counsel would be present virtually?
So duty counsel will be, so we've moved now to duty counsel being in person
Everywhere?
everywhere. Yes. It's
Okay.
like in some locations we can't find in-person coverage. So we're still backfilling remotely. But we are requiring duty counsel to be in person for those list days. I mean, depending on the location, it's like some core locations are better than others, that even though duty counsel is in person, they can still connect with the client that is remote, because it's not that much different than before, because when both of them were remote, they still have to not log out, but at least mute themselves and go call the client separately.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing would happen right now, only the lawyer would be in person, for example. So it's like they would just have to step outside the courtroom and call the client, or the client can call them and connect that way.
Okay. So it's still something that will work then. I
Yes.
guess.
It's
Okay,
like,
great.
and I think it just depends on the infrastructure of each courthouse. I think some
And it's all
courthouses
different.
can't
Yeah.
do both. And it's like, and that's the difficulty we're having with the hybrid model of the courts, because some appearances are in person, some are remote. So this is the best option we've come up with so far. And we're trying to work with the courthouses to see if they can facilitate somehow. It's like connecting family duty counsel that's there with the people that are remote. So it's like they can still, so duty counsel can still be reached by phone outside of the courtroom, just as they have been before. So it's just a matter of the court having the infrastructure to actually facilitate both at the same time.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting to what family duty counsel cannot do. So they can't give advice on non-family matters, obviously. So it's like if client has questions about civil matters like wills, estates, it's like they can't give advice on that. They can't give advice on criminal matters. They can't help if the client already has a lawyer, and they cannot become the client's lawyer while acting as family duty counsel. Now, if the client wants to request them later on, if they get approved for legal aid, that's fine. But it's like they can't become their lawyers. I can get into a private retainer, or it's like even a legal aid retainer while they have their assigned shift as family duty counsel. They cannot attend court or trials or contested hearings, court for trials or contested hearings. They can't prepare documents for a client, although we used to make exceptions for that, especially with the old provincial court forms that were just carbon copies that we check marked says. Unfortunately, that's not very practical with the new provincial court forms. They can't assist with complex property disputes, although they can provide general advice on property division to a certain degree. They can't advise the client regarding Court of Appeal proceedings. However, they can provide them with advice on some procedural matters when it comes to appeals. So it's like, especially if that appeal is from provincial court to Supreme Court, not necessarily on the merits, although some duty counsel do provide advice on the merits, but at least on the procedure they can provide advice with. And lastly, they can't advise clients on non-BC court procedures or forms. So if somebody has an ongoing court process in Alberta and they say, what do I do about this? Unfortunately, they just can't do it. Okay, so where is family duty counsel? Well, as you probably know, they're at most provincial court locations on family list days. During the COVID-19 pandemic, all family duty counsel services were offered remotely, and some locations did not have family duty counsel at all. So the clients were being referred to family LawLINE. So it's like some locations that come to mind, like Burns Lake, Golden. So it's like we didn't have family duty counsel for those locations at all for over 2.5 years. We have, as of October of this year, we have resumed in-person services in all of the locations that we previously had duty counsel, including the ones where we didn't even offer remote services. Now, the caveat for that is that even though it's in person, as I said, there's some location where we're having difficulties finding local or even regional counsel. So we are backfilling those locations remotely. We have full-time lead lawyers in Kelowna, New Westminster, Surrey, Vancouver, and Victoria. And Andrea, I know you were talking about the expanded duty counsel in Victoria and it's like in Vancouver. Even though Vancouver is not expanded, they kind of follow a very similar model. And right now, Surrey is following actually a very similar model where they have appointments, they have administrative support, and they have follow-up written advice. And what I want to clarify is that even though it's back to in-person, especially locations that have a dedicated phone line, and especially locations that have administrative support, but even the ones that don't, as long as they have a dedicated phone line that where you can reach duty counsel, so it's not just the individual lawyer's phone number. So it's, we still offer the possibility for the client to have advice either in person or remote. Even though the lawyer is in person for the advice services, the client can benefit from either one. And the way we did it that way is because we want to make sure that there's access to justice, because I know some clients do prefer in person, but some do prefer remote. And that way our lawyer, if they are there in person for their entire shift, can actually provide advice in person at 9 a.m. and then at 10 a.m. they can meet with somebody over the phone.
Just to clarify, in towns where there are circuit courts, are the duty counsel lawyers, are they generally where the court is based out of, or are they in all the communities where the circuits pass through?
So we do have certain circuits, for example, the Bella and Bellacoola and Asag, and we have the Haida Gwaii circuit. And those are assigned to a specific lawyer for a specific period of time. And they follow the circuit. And usually they provide their contact information to the people that are accessing the courts in those circuits. And part of our contract for those circuits, it's a little bit different than the regular family duty counsel, is to provide advice in between the circuit court dates.
Okay.
We also have part-time lead lawyers. So the full-time lead lawyers means that they're there 5 days a week, 7 hours a day. So it's like and then there usually is like there's one lead lawyer and one additional, or maybe sometimes two additional in some location roster lawyers. But the lead lawyer is the constant, and they usually monitor and assign work throughout among the roster lawyers. We also have part-time leads in the Fraser Valley, for example. We have a lead that is splitting her time between Chilliwack and Abbotsford, for example. So in total, it's like she's there 5 days a week, but she's 3 days in Abbotsford and 2 days in Chilliwack. We also have a part-time lead in Kamloops, in Nanaimo, and in Prince George. And right now we have administrative assistant in Nanaimo as well. So we are hoping to enhance that service. So it's not quite the same as the Vancouver, Victoria, and Surrey. So they don't have written advice yet, but they are moving towards providing more support, because they have an administrative assistant that can make appointments, can check that the client has the documents in advance of their appointments with the lawyer. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a bit. Now, for certain family duty counsel locations, interpreters can be provided for office appointments if prearranged. So those are the ones where we have administrative support. So that's one of the advantages in Nanaimo, that right now that we have administrative support, so we can provide interpreters if the client tells us in advance. The same for Surrey, Vancouver, and Victoria, for example.
One of the, I guess it's more of a comment than a question. So we work with like training advocates and supporting advocates to do their work. And one of the big things that I think is really important is for advocates to be able to have clients that can access duty counsel and then help the client to implement advice. And I've always noticed that it's sometimes like some people always get summary advice memos. I hadn't quite put together that it was the ones that haven't assigned. Like, that makes sense. But I think it's, if there is anything that we can kind of do to promote doing that, I think that is a really effective use for advocate. Like, how do we help create when clients can access legal advice, it's really hard for them to mentally hold on to that information and then to be able to transmit it to a legal professional who can help implement the advice. Like, I know that those summary advice memos can take, for some lawyers, 15 minutes, for some lawyers, 3 hours. Even if there's a way of doing a standardized, like, please provide A, B, C, D, like fill out this form, make sure to include A, B, C, and referrals, including family law advocates, just being able to do that, so that, because that's always been a really big barrier. And that's one of the things we're trying to do at RISE, is trying to reduce those barriers in implementing advice. So if I can provide a little bit of feedback that way, those summary advice memos, I think, is something that could be really prioritized.
Good to know. It's like, I'll keep that in mind.
Is it also possible, like, say, I often tell my clients and advocates that I train to ask for a summary advice memo, but I didn't realize, I thought it was standard that they were given, which is obviously my bad. But if clients are asking for them, is it possible that even just like any sort of memo could be provided? Like, make sure you fill out form 4 or whatever it might be, even if the advice on the memo isn't substantive.
Mm-hmm. And there are some lawyers that do family duty counsel. I know, I think, unfortunately, for most of the locations, we don't have the support. So the administrative support and also the time to implement this is like, because they don't have appointments. So it's like, sometimes they have a list. It's like they have a line of people waiting out the door. So they can't spend a full hour with the client. It's like they can spend sometimes 15, 20 minutes. But there are some lawyers that even without that requirement, sometimes will jot down information for the client. But unfortunately, it just depends on availability. For the location that I mentioned, so there's 3 locations that are offering written advice right now. So which is Surrey, Vancouver, and Victoria, and obviously the LawLINE. Those have set appointments. They're an hour appointments. They have administrative support that can then send the advice to the clients and manage all of that. So it's like, it's more of a question of providing the administrative support and triage. I think that's the problem sometimes. Okay, so in terms of the locations for family duty counsel, and because like I said, sometimes it's in person, sometimes it's remote, and we're doing our best to update the family law website. Or so in terms of our family duty counsel website with the locations and hours. And if I can ask to click on that link. Okay. Okay, so it's like we have updated that. It's like, let me just see where we are. Yes, so we have updated this website to indicate that as of October 2022, it's like family duty counsel will be provided in person with phone-only services available in specific locations, just because we do have some locations like Powell River is the one that comes to mind where we don't have any lawyers that are willing to attend in person. But there's a few others where we are backfilling. So it's like sometimes we might have a lawyer in person and one remotely for a certain listing. And if you can scroll down a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower until we get to the locations. Okay, a little bit lower. Sorry, it's like I think it might be quite a bit lower. So keep going. Okay, so family duty counsel location. So I wanted to kind of just give you some examples. It's like I just picked some random ones. It's like, and because I was talking about Abbotsford and Chilliwack, if we can click on Abbotsford on the plus sign. So it's like, so the phone numbers have been updated. So it's like, so right now it's like, because we're saying that it's Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in Abbotsford, because that's where I was saying that we have a lead that splits her time between Abbotsford and Chilliwack. And if we were to go to Chilliwack, it will show up as having as like available duty counsel on Monday and Wednesday. So it's the other 2 days of the week. The number, even though for Abbotsford and Chilliwack is a different number, it will actually direct you to the same voicemail. It's like, because it will just be the Abbotsford and Chilliwack family duty counsel. That's why it says, even though it says that hours are Monday to Friday, because it's the same number. So our lead will check the numbers regardless of which number you call, either Abbotsford or Chilliwack, for example. You can scroll down to Duncan. I wanted to use that as an example as well and expand it. Now, Duncan is another one that we've changed slightly since the pandemic as of October. Duncan used to be a location where we provided just during the pandemic, just family duty counsel during the listing. generally on Wednesdays. Now we've resumed the advice services. So we have half a day advice services on every Monday and Friday, for example, in Duncan. So that's one of the other examples. I'm not going to go through all of them. It's like Golden used to be, like I said, one of the locations where we always refer people to just the LawLINE. Now we're resuming Family Duty Counsel for the list days. They're usually about once a month in Golden. It's like, but we have started that, having that in person again. And for the locations where we only have Family Duty Counsel for the list day, not for any other days for advice, we are also recommending, the website recommends to contact the Family Law Line on any other day for urgent matters. And as I mentioned, it's like, I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's like Powell River is one of the locations where, fortunately, it's only remote at this time. So I think we can go back to the presentation. I just wanted to use some examples, and it's like, but if you go through those, each location, it will tell you what services are available and whether they have advice services or they have, only representation during the family list days, or if they have advice services as well. And I know this is not necessarily advice services, but it's very related. So family limit representation contracts, because many Family Duty Counsel location will not be able to assist with family management conferences, mostly because some of the lawyers are not comfortable just jumping in on a family management conference without preparation in advance, but also because a lot of the times family management conferences are scheduled on non-family list days when Family Duty Counsel is not available in that location. So instead, what we're telling clients, and it's like lawyers, it's specifically Family Duty Counsel, is that they should tell the clients about the family limited representation. So because if they qualify for advice services, they most likely qualify for the family limited representation contract, even if they're not eligible for full representation. The eligibility is about $1,000 per month higher than for the standard contracts. And these contracts may be issued to assist with any type of family law issues other than just divorce alone. But divorce can be included as part of the other issues, but not just divorce. And that can include support, property division, which there's no standard representation for property division, for example, and parenting issues, even when safety is not a factor. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background how these contracts came to be. So Legal ABC first came up with these contracts. They were implemented, I think, in September of 2018, and they were as a way to address the gaps between the standard representation contracts and the Duty Counsel or Family Law Line advice services. And until recently, actually, they were funded from our regular budgets, so we were kind of had to watch them very closely, and in terms of extending them, both in terms of hours and the time that they were valid for, we were very strict. As of April of 2022, the government saw the value of these contracts and provided specific funding to support continuing these types of contracts. And that's why in April 2022, we actually increased the financial eligibility. Until then, for the majority of time of these contracts, they used to have the same financial eligibility as standard contracts. They just used to include more issues. We at LABC also have conducted, we had an independent agency conduct an evaluation of these contracts. And if you are interested in seeing those results, where both lawyers and clients, I am not doing that. I don't know what I'm touching, but I don't think it's on my end. Anyway, so as part of the evaluation, both lawyers and clients were surveyed and interviewed. And overall, they were very well received, although there's some feedback, and we are working to address those and maybe implement some of those feedbacks. If you are interested in the evaluation, the report that was completed, you can find it under our website under About Us. If you go to reports and then survey and evaluations, and under the Family Law and Child Protection Services, you will see it's the latest evaluation that was posted there. we are working on, like I said, on implementing some of the recommendations. We don't have any specifics yet, but we probably should we could be making an announcement by the end of November, beginning of December. So with specifics, we're looking at, so it's like, without getting into specifics, we're looking at expanding not only the length of the contract, so past the 120 days, but also the available hours. Right now, they're 8 hours for general preparation, that it can include legal advice, assistance, and up to 3 hours to represent the client in court. And when they talk about court attendance, it's like, this doesn't include contested hearing, but it includes any brief uncontested hearing, family management conferences, family settlement conference, or judicial case conferences.
Just a very quick question.
Mhm.
Sorry. When you are announcing the changes, one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm pretty up to date on legal aid stuff generally, usually, like I find that even I get things a couple months after they've happened. Do you have a place where you centralize changes to things?
Yes, we do. So it's like, so any announcements are usually posted in the LAB. Adam, remind me what that stands for. Yeah, so the LAB, no, it's Legal Aid Bulletin, is that what it is? I can't remember. It's like, I can get back to you on that. It's like, we call it LAB, but it's like, no, it's like, Alex, maybe you can tell me what LAB stands for. For any notices, updates to our policies, like contracts, or it's like when we put it for the lawyers, it's available on our website, on our general website. Yeah, okay, not bulletin, brief. It could be that. Yes, but it is publicly available, so anybody can search those. And that's where we posted all of the updates whenever we did changes to the family limited representation contracts, either eligibility or financial eligibility or issues. Okay, so these contracts, like I said, it's like they're intended to provide some unbundled services for clients who do not qualify for a full representation contract. But as you've heard in probably other presentations, we first try to see if the client qualifies for a full representation contract. And if not, we keep going down the list until we, so it's like, it's either for a standard representation contract, exception review, a limited representation contract. And if they don't qualify for either one of those, we will refer them to advice services, family advice services. Although the only time that would happen was probably just for divorce alone, because otherwise they would probably qualify for a limited rep contract. Yes. It's I don't think it's necessarily useful. It's like they always assess them as like to see if they qualify for the highest level of service. So it doesn't make that much of a difference. I mean, you can mention that, but they will still assess them to see if they can get them the full representation contract. Okay, I'm just looking at my time to make sure that I don't run out. So these contracts are sort of intended to provide the client with the assistance necessary to support mediation, negotiating a settlement, or representing themselves. So it's like if they have a hearing coming up, the lawyer cannot attend the contested hearing with them. They can attend the family management conference or what used to be called a first appearance or a short application, but not a contested hearing or a trial, but they can help the client prepare for that hearing. So it's like prepare their documents, prepare what they're going to say, things like that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the family law line. You're probably all very familiar with it already, but it's very similar to Family Duty Counsel, although it's all remote, so it's all over the phone. It gives information, advice, and assistance on family law and child protection matters. It's operated by administrative assistants and a roster of lawyers around the province.
Swap you.
Okay.
Your battery's almost in. That's why it's making noises.
Okay, thank you. So the hours of service for the telephone advice, are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 9 to 3, and Wednesday from 9 to 2:30. And I wanted to specify, it's not necessarily for a telephone advice. This is just for the call center. So it's like if the client has never had contact with the family law line before, they need to first get in touch with one of the administrative assistants, just get their names, birthday, address, all of that, so they can create a profile in our system and then connect them with the lawyer. Once they've done that, there are later appointments available in the day, as late as 7 o'clock at night. So it's not like they can only get advice until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There are later appointments. Clients are referred to the service either via our intake services for legal aid intake, or family justice counselor, or community agencies, advocates like you, or support workers. So they can come from anywhere, and we highly encourage you to advertise this program, because it does serve the entire province. You do get advice memos. That's the advantage, and you do get up to 6 hours of advice, not 3 hours. Okay, so, and also the administrative assistants do maintain digital client files and records. They set appointments. They make sure that the client, for example, if the lawyer said it's like, okay, you can make another appointment once you get these documents. So it's like the administrative assistants will actually work with the client to say, it's like, oh, do you have this? And it's like, and they won't make a second appointment until they've made sure that they at least have some information. Otherwise, it's a waste of the client's time, because they only have a certain amount of hours. So there's no point in making an appointment if they don't have that information, because the lawyer will just send them back to get it. Digital files are maintained to allow for continuity of service. So it's like the lawyer, even if it's a different lawyer, for example, we try to maintain it with the same lawyer, but if it's a different lawyer, they'll have access to previous advice memos so that the client doesn't have to repeat everything all over again. So the lawyers advise and support clients who have court or non-court matters, although they cannot attend court with the client. So it's like, unlike family duty counsel who are available in court, this is just over the phone for advice. Unfortunately, we cannot assist clients who are in custody, because we need to be able to, the lawyer needs to be able to call the client for appointments, and they can't do that if they're in custody.
Wondering, because I've often thought of family duty counsel and family law line as being very comparable. I'm wondering what the logic is behind having duty counsel is 3 hours and family law line is 6 hours, and why can't they all be 6 hours?
Well, it's like, so that's why we call it expanded family law line. So we had family duty counsel for a lot longer than we've had family law line. So it's like, when it's like, just like with the expanded family duty counsel, this used to be a project. So it's like to kind of see how it works. So that's sort of how it stayed. It was like, we might look in the future at updating those limits, but it's like, yes, it was a project, and we wanted to assess it. And we've done a few assessments on that as well. But that's why the expanded family duty counsel and the expanded family law line have 6 hours.
Was that all you had? You're good. I'm just wondering, when I refer clients, they always want to know like what the wait time is going to be. And like at Rise Women's Legal Center, we're not an emergency service. And so usually when something is a bit more emergent and we aren't able to help, LawLINE would be my next kind of option. But I'm wondering what you would suggest in terms of timelines to provide clients. I know it depends, but I know that other issues have been, hello? Oh, I think I turned off. Things have been a bit delayed with like staff and stuff. But like, is like a week to get in touch with a lawyer on average, or like even like what's the wait time generally to get in to just talk to an.
Yeah, so the way it works, so it's like the client would first call the family law, so it's like the legal aid intake, who would transfer them then to the administrative assistants on the law line, who would triage the client. It's like generally that's within a few minutes. It's like in terms of when they get transferred to the law line. So it's like they would definitely talk to somebody that day, both with the administrative assistant and most likely with the lawyers. Like it just depends on the day and how many calls we have. So it's like they would just be put in the queue to talk to somebody if that's their first contact with the law line. In terms of follow-up appointments, that depends, because usually we try to schedule them with the same lawyer.
Oh no, second. This one's better. Oh, okay.
So in terms of their first contact with the LawLINE, they should get in that day. And the wait time in terms of how long they're waiting on the line, that just depends on call volumes that day. But for follow-up appointments, it just depends on when the next lawyer is like the same lawyer they talked to before is scheduled. If it's too far in advance, so it's like if the lawyer they talked to for their first appointment is not scheduled for a month, we're usually going to schedule them with another lawyer. Unless it's really not urgent at all. So it's just but a month is still a long time, even for non-urgent matters. Okay, so in terms of the family law lines, like lawyers advise and support family justice mediation clients too. So it's like if they're involved with the family justice services and mediation, so it's like any advice on any drafts that they have on an agreement, it's like they can help with that. They provide referrals to other services, including online resources and other public agencies. And that's done either by the lawyers or sometimes by the administrative assistants. They provide legal coaching to help people who are self-representing, and interpreters are available if needed. And actually, we can schedule an appointment fairly fast. For the LawLINE, we use a service called CanTalk, so we connect them pretty fast with that. So this is the number that first-time LawLINE clients call. This is the intake number. So it's like, I think if you were in the previous presentation next door, you were provided with the CP line that may get you in faster, just because there's two call centers. There's no way to contact the LawLINE directly for an initial appointment, except by calling the intake line. But returning clients are provided with different phone number or an email address directly to the LawLINE. So it's like that goes directly to the administrative assistants on the LawLINE so that they can do follow-up appointments. If they have questions, they can sometimes answer the questions if it's just legal information, not advice, or they can clarify if there's something very easy that can be clarified in the advice given. It's like, and they, without providing legal advice, they might be able to help with that. Like providing links to forms. If the lawyer said it's like, fill out this form, and it's like, well, this is where you can find it. Okay, so this is a new project, a new program that we have as part of the LawLINE. Okay, so it's like, I'll hurry it up. So we've recently added a staff paralegal to help family LawLINE clients who require additional support. So the process for this is that the family law lawyer, for example, is like during the course of their consultation with the client, if they determine that the client, given the circumstances, maybe some barriers to self-representation, may benefit from the help of a paralegal, they can refer them to that service. But it has to be referred by the lawyers, like after you've had the consultation. And once the client has been referred to that service, the paralegal can assist with a variety of things. So things like providing legal information in the areas of family law and child protection, completion or assisting in completing court forms or other forms or documents, affidavits and financial statements. And actually, our paralegal is drafting those documents for the clients. Unlike the lawyers who cannot draft the documents, it's like, but they can provide advice on how to draft it. It's like the paralegal can actually draft the documents. And then generally, she will ask the client to make another appointment with the lawyer so they can review them, because the paralegal can't provide legal advice. They can provide assistance under the supervision of a lawyer. So that's why it has to go through the lawyer.
So to be clear, when the paralegal is engaged in drafting documents, there will be a follow-up appointment before those documents are provided to the client. So
no, the documents are provided to the client with the instructions to schedule another appointment for the lawyer to review them.
So that means the client could still proceed with those documents without the lawyer
they could
overseeing them.
But they always get it's like, we're not a lawyer, so we're assisting you with this. I recommend, so you have to go and review this.
In between. So with the time with the paralegal is not counted towards lawyer advice time, right?
No, it's not. And by the way, so it's like, that's why I'm saying it's like the paralegal only gets involved after the client has already had one appointment. So she follows the written advice. So it's like based on what the lawyer has provided in terms of direction. And she sometimes follows up with the lawyer if the written advice maybe doesn't provide enough information for her to draft the document based on the advice given. So she might reach out to them directly and say, it's like, what did you mean by this?
Is there a limit to how many hours the paralegal has?
Not currently.
Okay. And there's just one for the whole province?
Yes, currently only one.
Next question. So sorry. Can the paralegal draft separation agreements?
No, they
Okay.
cannot. So it's like that's on my next page, I think.
Okay. Can the LawLINE lawyers review and then provide independent legal advice that you need to sign off on for a separation agreement or no?
They cannot provide the independent legal advice certificates, and they generally within the hour they can't review the entire separation agreement to provide independent legal advice. But just like family duty counsel, family law line lawyers can review parts of the agreement and answer specific questions, but the problem is it's summary advice, so they can't review the entire thing within the 45 minutes or an hour they have available and provide the certificate.
If it's provided in advance of the meeting, could they?
No,
Or no?
unfortunately, we don't do that now. But it's like, but they can review separation agreements, and it's like, especially if the client has specific questions, it's like they might not have time to look at the entire thing in a very great detail, every single part of it. Some other things that the paralegal can work with is to helping the client identify documents that they need and in order to support their position. So sometimes they'll say, it's like, okay, so it's like, you might want to get this document, or it's like for the financial statement. So it's like your tax returns or something like that. So when she's working with them to draft documents, they can help them collect those documents, tell them it's like, oh, this is where you could get those documents. They can provide explanation, clarification, and interpretation of relevant substantive and procedural law. They can provide coaching and guidance. And next steps on how to help the client represent themselves through all stages of court. And they can provide tips for legal research and self-advocacy. Can provide some explanation of court orders and written agreements. So some clients may not understand what the order says or what the agreement says. It's like, and depending on how complicated the question is, she may decide that it's like, this needs to go to a lawyer for legal advice. But they can provide referrals to other services like family justice counselor, community agencies, legal advocates. They can engage an interpreter. What is not listed here is like our paralegal has also been assisting clients if they want to apply for legal aid in terms of facilitating that process. So in terms of gathering documents for that. Okay. So this is the answer to your question earlier. They cannot, so the paralegal cannot assist with appeals, civil issues, adoption, drafting of wills, or drafting of separation or cohabitation agreements. And as you mentioned, since we only have one paralegal, not all clients may be able to receive this service due to either conflicts or volumes. And the paralegal may also refer some clients to other local support services where they're available, because in some communities, there might be support services that provide very similar services. So we want to keep the paralegal service available for those communities where there aren't any services like that. Okay, I think I am in time. Any questions?
Thank you.
My pleasure.